Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abassi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And I am grateful to be here. I have had a really busy week, and I'm grateful to be here because I'm still functioning enough to actually do the podcast episode today. Yesterday, I had gone to meet some friends for a picnic at near the river near my house. And then today I had a bunch of women over in sobriety, and we had a women's meeting and a sobriety meeting, and we're going through the book women's way through, let's see, a woman's way through the 12 steps. And this is what it looks like for those of you who are looking at the video. So anyway, it's pretty good. It's like a new perspective on the steps, and I'm enjoying it. But it's a lot. It's been a lot for me over the past couple of days, and I'm still functioning. So that's something to be grateful for. I'm really, really tired, but I'm actually okay, honestly. I mean, I've got the underlying dizziness and the headache, but it's not incapacitating. Yeah, incapacitating, incapacitating. So today, I want to talk about deciphering our self-will and learning to turn it over. This is something that we talked about today. We were reading the second half of step 3 out of this book, The Women's Way Through the 12 Steps. So I want to talk about how the self-centered fear, which is the root of our character defects that I talked about yesterday, tie into our self-will and how we can shift from being willful to willing. So I think I'm predicting there's going to be a lot of play on words here, but we'll see. We'll just see what comes out. That's what we do here. So the key challenges in recovery is understanding our self-will and learning how to turn it over. This is one of my key challenges that I faced. And this process is super important for, I think, repeating action in our daily life to try to practice the principles. It's just trying it over and over again. Like, it's progress, not perfection. That's where this comes from, I believe. So how do we decipher what our will is and learning how to turn it over? Wow. I mean, that's a lot. I think I've heard it so many times over the years that I've been in sobriety. How do I know what God's will is for me? Well, I am not going to sit here and try to pretend like I know what that is, but I can tell you my experience about trying to figure out what my will is and how I need to practice letting it go. So I believe, coincidentally, and maybe it's just because all of this is falling on me over the past couple days, but that it all ties together into those character defects rooted in self-centered fear. When we feel uncomfortable, irritated, or depressed, like I talked about yesterday, we act out of fear. And that fear drives our behavior. And right, so I talked about these examples of the fear that I deal with which is fear of failure, fear of judgment of others, which kind of ties into the fear of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of pain, both physical and emotional pain, and so many more different types of fear. So these fears drive my behavior, and that leads to these character defects because I'm not acting truly from my values and from like reasonable, realistic thinking. I'm acting out of fear. And so that leads to a character defect, and it manifests as self-will. Like I think that the the action is the self-will that comes out. So self-will is when we're trying to control everything around us, acting as if we're running the show. And this behavior is often a reaction from this internal junk, the fears, the insecurities that have dictated our lives for so long when we were drinking. And you can put the drink down and still have these fears create these or feed the character defects, and then we're acting on it. So as we become more introspective and familiarize ourselves with the fears that are causing the character defects, we can start to see how these defects show up as self-will. That is how I am able to determine when I am trying to force my will upon everyone and everything around me, every situation, every circumstance. I'm learning how to distinguish between making choices that are in harmony with life, which is a great phrase that I heard today out of the book, versus being driven by internal junk. So making choices that are in harmony with life versus self-will being driven by internal junk, fears, character defects. In this process, we learn how to use our will to make choices that align with our values, with who we are, our true selves, rather than being dictated by fear. And this is where the shift from being selfish, I say we've got selfish, selfless, and self-full. And self-full, I think is in my opinion where I want to be, because I want to understand. I want to be full of an understanding of self. Being self-full for me means taking care of me, acknowledging what my needs are, and making choices that support my well-being. I don't know if that's in line with what the book said today, but that's kind of how I'm defining it today. And we could change it tomorrow. But the key to this transformation is willingness. That's probably no surprise. Being willing means to being open to change, being open to new experiences and the possibility of growth. And what fell out of my mouth today when I was sharing with these women was that willingness is cracking the door, and letting go is walking through the door. Letting go of the need to control everybody and everything. Letting go of the stuff that's in my dark place. Taking the action to actually talk to another person about it. Any of these actions that we take in our recovery program, whether it is going to meetings, calling a sponsor, reading the literature, being mindful, meditating, all of this stuff is walking through that door, walking through that cracked door. Um, I have to crack the door every single day. When I open my eyes, that is me cracking the door. Before my feet hit the ground, that time that I always talk about with you guys about how I wake up and I feel like shit, and I remind myself, oh yeah, I had a stroke. Oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic. Oh yeah, I don't have a job anymore. That has to change into willingness. That has to change into growth. That is all cracking the door. I have to crack the door every morning. And each day presents new challenges for how far I'm able to crack that door open in the morning. Because some days there is just a sliver of light coming through that door. And other days it swings open like it's no one's business and I'm ready to skip through. Um, so I have to make these choices for my well-being every day, by deciding, choosing to be willing, choosing to be open, and this allows me to move forward. It allows me to put my feet on the ground. It allows me to walk through the door, even if, even if I need a walker to walk through the door. I'm allowed to say that because I was on a walker once, right? I'm allowed to say that. I don't know. Some days it's hard to walk through the door. I get it. You know, it's sometimes I walk through the door and I have a big old lump in my throat. Some days I walk through the door and my head is hanging really low. Um, some days I've spent the whole day having frolicked around and being free on the other side of the door. And before I go to bed at night, the door shuts again because I get tired. I get tired of taking care of myself. I get tired of being willing. And that's okay. That's what being a human being is. Um, and I really feel like today in my women's meeting, I had some really powerful conversations. And it reminded me how hard it is to be okay. It's really, really hard. And when I think about how many people are out there suffering and feel like they don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. Sometimes there is nowhere to turn. Sometimes the only thing we have is time in front of us. It feels like sometimes all I have is time behind me and time in front of me. And I'm just sitting in the space in the middle. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't really know where I've been that is going to help me with where I'm going. But in those cases, I remember what it felt like when I first got sober. I remember what it felt like when I was still drinking and not being able to see the other side, just completely being blind to the fact that my pain was going to end one day. I had no clue that the pain would end one day and that I was going to be okay. I really didn't. Um, I had people tell me that. I had my husband way, way back then told me, just keep doing what you're doing. Everything is going to work itself out. And I didn't see it. Um, but I was willing to keep putting one foot in front of the other because there was nothing else to do. There was no other option. I didn't have another choice. And sometimes that's what willingness looks like. Sometimes willingness looks like just doing the next right thing because there's no other option. And that's okay. It doesn't feel okay, but it's still going in the direction of healing, even though it hurts. So when I started my sobriety, I didn't understand at all what it meant to turn over my self-will. I knew that I like to control people, places, and things. I knew that. And I kind of prided myself on it. To be honest, I felt like it got me through my career a little, like helped me, helped push me through my career a little faster because I had that kind of will. I thought it was a positive thing, but and it was, it is that I have that kind of drive, but there is a lot to it that is resistant to letting life happen. Instead I wanted to control the way that things happen. And there's a lot of stress that comes out of that. And what I didn't recognize until years in was that a lot of that control, that self-will, was born from fear. It didn't feel like it when I was practicing self-will. It felt like I was brave and courageous and determined and throwing out a few F-bombs every now and then, like I'm a badass. That's what it felt like. But that is not where it got its life. That's not where it was born. It was born from fear. And I learned how to protect myself with my character defects from that fear. And the action that I took that was fed by my character defects was self-will. So slowly over time, being able to acknowledge my fears happened when I was able to look at and talk to my sponsor about how these fears affected my role in my relationships. I started to make those choices that were in harmony with my life, with the life around me, with my life and the life around me. And it's taken a long time, and it takes a lot of consistency, perseverance, cracking the door every morning. That shift into this kind of mindset and practice has brought me so much more peace and clarity. We've been talking a lot about clarity in my life than I ever thought was possible. I am a totally different person than I used to be. Totally different person. Um, if I don't even recognize myself sometimes. Uh, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I love the self that I've been all of these years, but I really love the one that I am now, that can look back and really feel like the Rachel that I am now wants to go back and take care of all the versions of me that have been left back there in the past. But the best thing I can do is use those lessons from the versions of me in the past and apply them to the version I am now. Um, so we're talking about identifying the fears that drive your behaviors, writing them down. We talked about that yesterday. Making a conscious effort to be willing to change. Um, that's a big deal. And sometimes it doesn't look like anything. It doesn't, like the action is up in your head. And I think it's so helpful when you can turn that into something tangible, whether that is writing it down or having a conversation with somebody else so that you're actually more like letting that process be outside of you a little bit so you can watch it happen. I don't like trying to have things all happen in my head because it feels like it's not a sure thing if it's up in there. If I write things down or I talk to somebody, it kind of gives me accountability, I think, to actually be making a change. And then taking these small steps towards looking at this on a daily basis, looking at the fears, looking at the character defects, and then understanding, keeping an open mind and understanding that this is what is creating my self-will. And then just continue to reflect and adjust. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to talk to a sponsor so often, because we're figuring this out on a daily basis. Going to a meeting, we're fine for an hour. We know that for sure. We're fine for an hour when we're in our meeting with all the other drunks. We know that we're okay, but it only lasts an hour and then we have to go back into the real world. And that's what our sponsors are there for. Our network is there so that we can reflect and adjust, adapt. as we look at how these things affect our behavior and calling people and getting it out of your head and making it more tangible, that's the only word I can think of right now, makes it progress faster, I think. And it also allows for celebrating successes, celebrating, oh, I figured that out. It can be that small, but talking about it is so important, in my opinion. So, deciphering and turning over our self-will is is part of this these checkpoints, I think. Understanding our fears that drive our behavior, and being willing to let go of control, making choices that align with our values instead of being driven by fear. This process surely brings more peace, clarity, and harmony into our lives. But we have to, again, it's so important to crack the door every day, every day. And that's why I was kind of getting so quiet earlier and contemplative about the fact that it's hard. It's hard to do this every day. And that's why I reached out for professional help and I talked to somebody once a week on Wednesdays, because I've got all of these resources and I still needed more. I needed to have one-on-one time with a professional that helps me maintain willingness, courage, um, and catches my self-talk when it starts to fall into a dangerous place. So, so try it. Think about it when you wake up in the morning. Crack the door. Crack the door with willingness, and then look at your actions throughout the day and understand that every action that you take that is aligned with your program is walking through that cracked door, that you opened with willingness in the morning. So that's what I have for you today. Don't forget to say hi to a stranger. I again said hi to a stranger while I was out walking Autumn. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this yesterday. Yesterday was Autumn's birthday, and she is 4 years old. And so I went into all of this effort today to make her a handmade birthday hat. And I got some yarn and I made a tassel that goes on top, and it says happy birthday to me. And there's a little strawberry on her hat because for her birthday, she got a new pink collar that has red strawberries all over it. And right under where it says happy birthday to me, it says 3 years. I did all of this. I put her in her bed with some flowers behind her. I put my phone in portrait mode. I balanced the hat on top of her, and she's such a little angel. She looks totally angry in the picture with this hat balanced on her head. And I went through all this effort. I sent it to my kids, and my son reminded me that she is not 3, she's 4. And I was like, oh shit. That's what I said. And I had sent the picture to all these people on my phone, and I was like, well, I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing the picture again. So anyway, that's what we get. This is the first year I've remembered her birthday on her birthday. Actually, I didn't remember it. My husband remembered it. And so I'm all ready to celebrate it. And then I happy birthdayed her the wrong year. So my excuse is that I had a stroke, and I think it's not too soon to be able to joke about that. So anyway, happy birthday to Autumn. She's my little velvet puppy, and I'm so grateful to have her. So that's what I have. Thank you so much for joining me today on Recovery Daily Podcast, and I will talk to you tomorrow.